Welcome back everyone to day 3 or to my third and final summary and top takeaways from Funnel Hacking Live 2021. Now, I've already covered the top takeaways from Russell Brunson himself and from the top speakers or just from all speakers that were at the event also. But this final video is actually going to focus on my favorite speaker there, or maybe anywhere ever, who is Dan Kennedy. Now, if you aren't already familiar with Dan Kennedy, he is, short story, maybe the smartest and best marketer on earth. Now, on the other hand, or on the same hand, he's extremely abrasive and aggressive and in your face and pretty much doesn't care about your opinions. Now, I'm sure part of that is marketing and part of that is just him, but just keep that in mind that some or maybe a lot of what he says will annoy you no matter what your opinions are, but put that aside, that regardless of how you feel about his personal opinions, there is so much to learn from this guy's brain and experience about marketing, generating leads, sales, and money, revenue, and profit, and more. As a reminder, I'm Alan Gudiel, and on this channel, we talk all things about booking high-ticket sales calls and clients. But let's go ahead and jump right in to the, I believe it's 9 top takeaways from Dan Kennedy from Funnel Hacking Live 2021. Now, to be fair, I've actually already read many, if not most, of Dan Kennedy's books. And actually, let me check. This is my Dan Kennedy shelf, I guess. I think this might be all the books I have of his. But anyway, in any case, all of these ideas, or not all of these ideas, were necessarily new to me, but he is maybe the one person who I always welcome refreshers from. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, the first big takeaway from Dan Kennedy here is the old story that he's mentioned about going from an annoying pest to a welcome guest. Now, his example of this is somebody breaking into your backyard. Now, this is obviously an unwelcome guest, or an unwelcome pest, I should say. But if the front of your house suddenly bursts into flames and this person is telling you, hey, this is how to get out of your house alive, then that person goes from unwelcome pest or from annoying pest to welcome guest. So this is just the surface level of this idea, but the point is that no matter what you're promoting, marketing, or selling, that you may think, oh, I'm annoying this person. This person has other things to do. They have other things to spend their money on. Wrong. The real mistake here is your positioning. Is if you are coming at them as an unwelcome or annoying pest, your real goal as a marketer and business is to find out how to become a welcome guest. The second big takeaway from Dan Kennedy at FHL was this idea isn't exactly new, but it's this, that shovel sellers almost always do better than shovel users. Now, you've probably heard something that is similar to this idea before, but most marketers and businesses still focus all their energy on using shovels as opposed to selling shovels. Now, you can think of shovels as pretty much any tool that people need to get what they want. So, for example, in the last 2 or 3 years, you, if you are a marketer or have an online business, have probably explored webinars, chatbots, Facebook Messenger, email autoresponders, challenges, quiz funnels, and a ton of other things that I won't get involved in here. Now, while all of those tools can be useful to anyone, the real beneficiaries of this exchange, according to Dan Kennedy here, is the shovel sellers, or the service providers, you can say, as opposed to the shovel users, who are the people using chatbots, using Facebook ads, using challenges, and all of these things, as opposed to being the person providing and selling these tools. The next big takeaway from Dan Kennedy here is the idea that finding a new audience for your successful presentation is much easier and is much better overall than creating a new presentation. So the point here is that when most businesses have an ad that doesn't work, or a webinar, or a sales page, or a video, or content, or a post on their Facebook page, whatever it might be, when most marketers and businesses, when they put something out there and it doesn't work right away, or even worse, if it does work once and then the next time it doesn't work, what most marketers resort to is changing the presentation or the message, when what they should be doing, especially if it already worked once, is finding the right audience. So let's stick with the idea or assumption that your presentation or your ad or your video already did well. It already converted leads or sales or whatever it might be. Now, if you run that same presentation, that same ad, that same whatever again, the second time, it might totally fall flat. Now, our human instincts are to say, oh no, this presentation doesn't work anymore. Let me change my offer. Let me change my intro. Let me change all of these things about my presentation. But if that presentation already worked recently or previously, then probably the bigger issue here is that you took that presentation to the wrong audience. Now, in some ways, there's a lot more to dive in here, and in other ways, there's nothing else to say. But just keep that in mind, that if you have a proven offer, presentation, ad, whatever it might be, and if the second time you run it, it doesn't work as well, then your problem is most likely targeting it at a bad or at a worse audience as opposed to delivering a bad message. The next big takeaway from Dan Kennedy here is the idea that most marketers and businesses do their best to spend the least amount possible to book new leads and to acquire new customers and clients. But Dan Kennedy's famous old phrase that you may have heard before is this: he who can spend the most to acquire a customer wins. Now, I can definitely understand if you're newer to business and marketing, and if you're saying, why in the world would I want to pay more for a lead or sale when I can pay less? Well, the answer is because your competitors are willing to pay more. And if you're both going for the same leads, if you are only able to spend $5 per client, but if your competitor is willing to spend $20, or is able to spend, I should say, if they are able to spend $20 per new client or customer or lead or whatever, then they are going to win. Now, this does not mean that it's fair or that it's right or whatever other fancy in the clouds words you want to think of, but we live here in reality. So the point here is, how can you best get more leads, customers, and clients? And the answer is to, one way or another, find a way to be able to spend the most to acquire customers and clients as opposed to the least, which is what most marketers and businesses aim for. The next big takeaway from Dan Kennedy at FHL is the idea of marketing math. Now, to be fair, Russell Brunson also kind of spoke on this earlier in the week, but the point is that marketing math, or your actual numbers, are often ignored, but Dan Kennedy says marketing math is like gravity. You can try to ignore it and avoid it, but at the end of the day, you can't. So this isn't a video about metrics that you should focus on, although you should focus on earnings per click, average cart value, cost per lead, and other ones like that. But the point here is, or what Dan Kennedy is saying, is that you should absolutely focus on these numbers. Find out exactly what a lead costs, what a sale costs, what an acquired customer costs, and all of those numbers, which I know might not seem very sexy or appealing, but those numbers, like he says, are gravity. You can try to ignore them, you can try to avoid them, but every business's success or failure always comes down to their math. The next big Dan Kennedy takeaway from FHL is this. It's the idea that, or this is what he says, that marketing is a combination of two things. It is, number one, behavioral psychology, and number 2, math, which we just spoke on. Now, the second part of this that he mentions is that everyone loves focusing on number 1, which is behavioral psychology. So that's biases and other types of sales tricks and stuff like that, which is important, to be fair. It is half of the situation. But the other half of the situation is marketing math, which we've already discussed is like gravity. So anyway, the point is that Dan Kennedy says that marketing is 2 things. Number 1, consumer psychology. Number 2, math. So he mentions that everybody loves number 1, which is psychology, but everybody ignores number 2, which is their marketing math, including some of their most important metrics. The next Dan Kennedy takeaway here is the idea that personality sells or matters and or both. Now, the point here is that it doesn't matter what you sell or at what price point. Actually, this probably does matter more if you're selling at a higher price point, but the point is that most marketers and businesses and salespeople totally ignore their personal personality and brand when it comes to the sale. Now, his examples, which might be slightly dated, but they are still just as relevant, are Walt Disney and Hugh Hefner. So if you're probably familiar with Disney and Disney World and that whole empire, but you may be less familiar with Hugh Hefner and the Playboy empire, which he built, which is a little smaller now, yes, but still made a huge dent or effect on US and even world culture. So Dan's point here is that one of the biggest reasons or one of the biggest factors that caused the success of these places, Disneyland, the Playboy Mansion, or whatever it might be, is actually the personality of the founder. So that could be Walt Disney or Hugh Hefner or Richard Branson or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whatever other famous entrepreneur or CEO or founder that you like. The point is that much of the success of these businesses and of that entrepreneur's future businesses can be based on their personality, their goals, their values. Just keep in mind that whatever the thing is that you're selling, if that's coaching, consulting, a car, a house, or whatever, just keep in mind that the seller also plays a huge factor in that person buying. The next Dan Kennedy takeaway here is somewhat controversial a little bit, I guess, but it's the idea that you should get them the first time. So I probably have a bunch of other videos on this at this point, but the point is that follow-up is extremely important. Now, you can do this with emails, with retargeting ads. One way or another, if you're involved in sales in any way at all, then you probably already know, or at least should know, the value of follow-up. But what Dan mentioned here, and I may be twisting his words or his idea here, is that you should focus more on getting them the first time. Now, he was mainly talking about public speaking at live events, which you could say is a little bit different, but I like to think, or actually I've seen that most marketing doubles over or overlaps into almost every single other aspect. So the point is that while follow-up is extremely important, and trust me, I'm probably making a few other videos on this coming up, Dan's point here is to double down or to focus on getting them the first time for many reasons, but especially because they will never be as excited as they are when they actually hear you the first time. So whether they're watching your webinar or seeing you speak live or meeting you in person, they will never be as excited in what you're talking about as when they are hearing you talk with all your enthusiasm, with all your conviction and stuff like that. The next great Dan Kennedy takeaway from FHL 2021 is this isn't exactly a new or revolutionary idea, but it's this, that people cannot sell at a price they wouldn't be willing to buy at. So for example, if you own a car dealership, if you hire someone who would never buy a $100,000 Mercedes-Benz, then you probably shouldn't hire that person as a salesperson, because whoever is selling it, they can't do nearly as good of a job if they aren't willing to invest that much themselves. So definitely apply this to your business, that whether you have salespeople on your team or you are the main salesperson, just keep in mind that any salesperson is very unlikely to sell something at a price point which they themselves would not buy. So if you are selling a $10,000 coaching package, have you bought a $10,000 coaching package? Or if you are selling a $50,000 car, have you bought a $50,000 car? Or would you at least be willing or able to? That's pretty much the point here. Are you already familiar with Dan Kennedy? Then comment below your favorite books, ideas, quotes, programs, products, or whatever from him that you've learned as well. For more help booking consistent high-ticket sales calls and clients, then definitely book a free strategy call with me below to find the biggest opportunities in your business. Well, that wraps us up for today. Thanks everyone for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next one.